Good evening, everyone, and welcome to This Week from Rockdale. Tonight, we've got actually two guests tonight. Our special guest tonight who's going to talk to us about gun legislation and Georgia Carry changing their name to Georgia 2A is going to be Executive Director Jerry Henry. And then we also will have Alex McDonald on here tonight because we all know Alex is a big pro Second Amendment person and has a lot of interest in what happens with firearm rights and especially here in Georgia. So I'm going to bring both these gentlemen in. Let me bring Mr. Henry in first and let him introduce himself. Well, I'll bring actually Alex in.
Good afternoon or good evening.
Hey, Jerry, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I'm Jerry Henry, the Executive Director of GA2A, formerly GeorgiaCarry.org, and it's a pleasure for me to be back on the air with y'all again.
Jerry, we're glad to have you here, and as always, we here at This Week from Rockdale, and actually Al Show, the Politics Show, we are big advocates of gun rights in the state of Georgia and the United States. Al and I both are members of Georgia Carry, which I guess is 2AGA now. So so we're both actually
GA2A.
GA2. We're both card carrying members, and we were talking to you about that during the show. So it's glad to have you here tonight.
Good.
Alex, I want to thank you for coming on tonight because without you, I don't know if we would be able to have a show.
My pleasure.
We're doing some tricky technical stuff tonight. Why don't you tell the folks what we're actually doing here this evening, Alex?
Well, we were having issues with, I think, with Jerry's internet connection. We can see him and we can hear him, but there's about a 10 or 15-second delay. So right now I have Jerry calling through to me on the phone. He's on camera at his house. He's calling me on the phone. I'm feeding his audio to your audience along with my audio. And we're adapting and overcoming. We're making it work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just glad we were able to do this. And Al was wanting to come on the show because it makes this happen. And I think you guys, by this happening, are going to get to find out some good information tonight about gun rights and what's going on in the state of Georgia, and specifically a piece of legislation that's working its way through the Georgia legislature at this time. Jerry, there's a piece of legislation that's working its way through the legislature at this time. It's a piece of constitutional carry legislation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this legislation that's working its way through the legislature, and also GA2A stance on that legislation and what it will mean to gun owners of the state of Georgia?
Well, basically, it's I'd be more than happy to talk about it. It's basically a bill that makes the Georgia weapons license optional. You'll be able to carry without a license anywhere. Right now, at least the bill states that you'll be able to carry anywhere without a license that you can carry with a license. The reason that the JWI will stay optional is so that you can carry in states with reciprocity. Plus, if you buy firearms, you don't have to do the background check. So it's basically it doesn't give us any other places to carry, but it does give us the right to carry without a license.
So this piece of legislation does not put any further restrictions, and that was a concern that I think Alex and I both had, was that the legislation may put additional restrictions. So it will be no additional restrictions.
Well, presently, as written, now remember we're making sausage down there at the state capitol. That doesn't mean that somebody won't try to change it. We will fight any changes that come along. And there are also some other bills that are in the House right now, and there is at least one other bill that will be introduced. And between one of the 3 or 4 that are down there, we hope that we'll get a good bill. And our goal is not to put any restrictions on there whatsoever that we do not already have.
Now, Jerry, is that why as an organization, and I'm going to say we as an organization because I'm a member of GA2A, Larry is also, and in the past, we've been hesitant to get behind these bills and push them forward, because constitutional carry
Right.
really isn't constitutional carry. It's more accurately
No,
described as permitless carry. And in the past, it's always
that's correct.
come with a lot of new restrictions on where you can carry, when you can carry, things like that. Is that what is different this year? Is that why we're able to get behind it as an organization this time?
Well, basically, yes. There's a couple of reasons behind it. Number one, it's about time that we did it. 21 states have already done it, and we need to move forward in Georgia so we can do the same thing. However, as you stated, a lot of states have put other restrictions on it, and it's also stopped states from getting more places to carry. This year, we don't think that's the case. We believe that it's going to be just what I said earlier, and that's the only way we'll back it, is for it to allow us to carry anywhere we can carry now without a permit, that we have to have a permit to carry,
And
and no further restrictions. But we don't gain any other places to carry through this legislation. But there are other bills in the General Assembly that will allow us other places and more freedoms.
and that's important to point out to people, that it was a good idea to wait until now, because Georgia Carry now, GA2A.org, by the way, for those folks who will be looking for this later. That site is currently under construction. It's being worked on, probably redirect you
Right.
back to the original. But there are states that have passed their permitless carry laws. And since they've passed them, they have made absolutely zero headway on removing restrictions on places to carry. Here in Georgia,
Correct.
Jerry and the organization did it the other way. They got all of the restrictions that we could get removed first. Now that those have been removed, it's a good time to implement permitless carry, and hopefully with no restrictions, because there really aren't that many places left to lift those restrictions
Right.
on. Let's tell people right
Right.
now, where are we not allowed to carry a gun with a permit currently?
Well, we're not allowed to carry in K through 12 schools. We're not allowed to carry in courthouses, prisons, or jails, state-run mental institutions, nuclear power plants, and there are some restrictions on campus carry on colleges, but you can carry there. You also can't carry within 150 foot of a polling place when an election is taking place. If there's no election, it's no problem. Those are the only places you can't carry right now. There are still some things that we would like to expand, but we're at the point where we need to go ahead and do this, because we can't really concentrate on those places and expect to get any further down the road.
Right.
Do you
We
think
expect to continue to work on those. We'd expect to continue to work on those places, and we will work on those places. And we will not back this bill if it puts further restrictions on us, or any restrictions whatsoever on us.
Right.
We will not back the bill. We would withdraw our sponsorship.
Jerry, right now, with the political environment the way it is, with the governor facing heated primary, and a lot of the incumbent legislators facing primaries, this is the idea time not only to push your constitutional carry, but it's also the idea time, those things that you're talking about. Because I'm going to tell you, I am uncertain of the political climate in the state of Georgia past 24 and 26. I'm chairman of the Rockdale Republican Party. I sit on the state committee. I'm probably going to assume another position in the Republican Party here in the near future. And I'll tell you right now, it's an uphill battle in this state, because when it comes down to it in the state of Georgia, where people don't want it, whether we want to realize it or not, it's a battle right now for turnout. Can we turn out enough Republicans to drive back the Republicans, and we're the Democrats? And I'll tell you, Jerry, I'm gonna be honest, I wouldn't wait for the future to try to push any of the initiatives that you want to. I think this year and 24, 26 may be the last years you get for a little bit. And that's just me speaking the truth.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think if we don't move now, there's a chance that we might not get enough people out to reelect Brian Kemp or Purdue if he gets it in there. We may not have enough people to get them through there. And if Stacey Abrams gets in, then you can expect a lot, in my opinion, you can expect a lot of the guys that are kind of rhinos right now to go back to the Democratic Party, and we'll be fighting a very uphill battle from henceforth and so on.
I think we could potentially see a slight Republican majority in these houses with not enough of a majority to move anything. That's what I personally see, Jerry. When you look at the landscape around the state, I think Republicans keep the majority, but it's such a small majority. You're going to have a coalition of Democrats to come over to be able to pay. And I don't think anything will get passed at that point.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think that it will not be all that difficult for us to play defense, although I'd rather play offense. But I think that the Senate and the House will be able to stop any restrictions. But as far as you say, as far as going forward and getting more places to carry and relaxing some of the draconian laws we still have, that probably will not happen. That's why it has to be done this year.
And then, I agree with that, and I think that's something as gun owners and Second Amendment advocates, we've got to push forward. But the interesting thing is, why did you guys change your name, and what's the rebranding all about?
Well, the reason we changed that is because we were Georgia Carry for about 15 years, and when we would go to places, and you might have seen it out at the Cherry Blossom Festival, people would come by and see the name Carey in our name, and they would say, "Well, I don't carry, so I don't really need to talk to these people." Well, we have always, since the beginning, fought for every gun legislation, for hunters, for sport shooters, home defense, you name it. We've always fought for those, and we filed several lawsuits fighting for those people as well. And so we decided that with things getting to the point where it's gotten in carry legislation, that what we needed to do is we need to go out and bring more people in under the banner of GA2A, because that will include all gun owners. Not that we didn't include them before, as you know, we did, but the name indicated that we didn't, that we were only for people who carried firearms. We're for the Second Amendment, totally.
And I think you're right. And people like Alex and I or some people who are really involved, we knew the organization fought for gun rights. It was a blanket thing. But you're right. Some people, I can see what you're saying, they would mistake that for just that you would be a one topic or one issue organization, and you weren't. You were a blanket gun rights organization, and always have been.
That's correct. Our name now reflects more of what we have been doing for the last 12, 14 years than it did with just the carry.
Yeah, Georgia Carry has been fighting against the DNR. The reason we can carry in parks is because of Georgia Carry's legislation.
Right.
They've been fighting for gun owners' rights for a very long time.
Well, Alan, I think we've discussed this before. The Georgia Carry has been much more effective a lobbying organization and gun rights activist than the NRA in the state of Georgia.
Oh yeah, far more. Your state organizations, your local state grassroots organizations, they're leading the way for gun rights, and it's got to happen at the state level. It's at this level. Mary Margaret Oliver, for example, every year introduces an assault weapons ban here in Georgia. And up until now, every year it doesn't go anywhere. But we're not gonna remain a comfortable red state for forever. It's not an indefinite thing. So the more we can do now, I think the more important it is. So which leads to this question, Jerry. If we're successful and if we get constitutional carry passed, if the state does flip, having passed it, will it make it a lot more difficult to undo, in your opinion?
Well, it will, depending on the numbers. If they have a super majority, they being the Democrats or the liberals, whatever you want to call them, if they have a super majority, then they could probably go ahead and do that fairly easily. But there are an awful lot of Democrats who are gun owners and who will not vote against them per se. Now, if you look at it, most of the legislation is down party lines, but there's an awful lot of Democrats that they're voting party line because that's what the Democrats tell them to do, basically. But if it came down to where they're going to have to vote against their own personal rights, and they know there's a chance they could lose it,
right?
Then all of a sudden they may get a little bit tighter on it. So I think if we get everything passed now, there's still a chance that we can lose it in the future, but I think it will be a little bit more difficult for them to get rid of it.
That's what I think as well.
And I think looking at this landscape of Georgia, when we look at what the future would possibly do, I agree with Jerry. I don't think there's a chance for a Democrat supermajority to have ever. I mean, I think more of a chance, Al, that we would go back and forth after 24, 26. There's a possibility of that they would be like dead even and could flip back and forth depending on presidential or gubernatorial years. I think it would be that tight for a while. I don't think there would be an opportunity for a supermajority.
Yeah, if you look at the fact that it's been somewhere in the neighborhood of over 10 million new firearms owners in the past couple of years, that tells you something. All those new firearm owners are not Republicans. They're not conservatives. They're not libertarians. We already had our guns. The ones that are getting them are the liberals that are seeing the light that's saying, hey, I may need some protection.
Yeah.
So I think that gives us a little bit of a cushion in there as well.
Yeah, I know an awful lot of Democrats that have been buying guns, have been going out and getting training, going to classes. And that's why I think it will be difficult to undo. I don't know what the polling data looks like. If you listen to the media will tell you that the majority of Georgians oppose permitless carry.
Right.
I find that hard to believe.
Sure.
I don't believe that in any way, shape, or form. I think the majority of people actually do support it. But what we're going to start hearing now is a blitz from the media and from politicians on the Democrat side, arguing that this is going to make Georgia less safe. And the beauty of that is we have plenty of data to point to. 20-something other states already have permitless carry, or constitutional carry. Their crime rates haven't gone up. The Democrats will, some folks on the left will argue that it gives a free pass to criminals to carry guns. It doesn't, because if you're already prohibited from owning a gun, this doesn't magically give you permission to own and carry guns. These 10 million new gun owners are law-abiding citizens that have gone through the background check process. They filled out the paperwork. They lawfully possess these weapons. And I have absolutely no problem with them carrying these guns around with them in public. And I know for a fact it's not going to increase crime.
Alex, you and I both talked about this thing. Go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, I was just going to say, first off, you don't know who's carrying a firearm to begin with. And what this bill does, what you've talked about is the prohibitors or the federal prohibitors. And we're not touching federal law in any way, shape, or form. We can't.
Right.
So all we're doing is saying, now you don't have to have permission to use daddy's car on Saturday night.
Right.
One of the things, and we just mentioned, we called it the assault weapons. Alex, you and I both talked about this. We think that those rifles are actually being misrepresented when they're called assault weapons. Do you know?
Oh, they are.
I mean, I think it should be a home defense rifle. I don't think it's a assault weapon. Jerry, I mean, what's your we don't think they should be labeled as assault weapons.
Well, anything's an assault weapon. There is no such category in the ATF there is a clarification or a classification of assault weapon with ATF, but it's a fully automatic rifle. Mm-hmm. These rifles are not fully automatic. They are, we call them modern sporting rifles. In fact, they are one of the most popular hunting rifles, especially for varmints, wild hogs, places that have any kind of varmint that's going to be in with your cattle or pets or anybody around the house. Those are the most popular rifles right now in the United States to use. So it's not an assault weapon. A baseball bat's an assault weapon. a fist is an assault weapon. More people are killed with hammers every year from Home Depot than they are by long guns, including so-called assault rifles, including shotguns, any kind of rifle. There's more people killed with hammers than there are with those guns.
Yep, it's true.
And I just wanted that brought out there because I like to just dispel a myth.
What offends me the most is when they call them military grade weapons. Mine are way better
Oh,
than
yeah.
military grade.
Well, I made a statement at a hearing when somebody talked about the military type weapons, and I said, if that's the best thing that the country has to give their men to go to war, I would hate to live in that country because you would be outpowered in a heartbeat.
Right.
It's just not there.
Right. Let's talk about there's other HB2 is currently waiting a hearing in the Public Safety Committee. Is that right?
That's correct. That's also a constitutional carry type bill. I don't expect that one to go anywhere, quite frankly.
Okay.
It could, but I doubt that. There's one that's going to be introduced shortly that will have a lot of backing that may go somewhere else. And I think that'll be the two competing bills when it's over with. That'll come out of the House, and we'll have to see what it says. But it basically does the same thing. Does not allow you to. Does not take away any of our rights, places we can carry, and it just makes the GWL optional.
Okay.
There's some other bills though. HB 259, I believe it is, by Jeff Mullis, will prohibit any database. Now, we can't have a central database in Georgia. That's against the law right now. But there's a lot of the local jurisdictions who are exchanging databases within their jurisdiction, and they think that that's legal. We don't think it is, and the bill will stop that. It'll also, if you remember, a few years ago, we passed a law that said that any municipality that confiscated firearms had to sell them every so often.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they haven't done that because there hadn't been any penalty behind it. But one of the things that this bill will do, HB 257 or 259, and I apologize for not having it on my tongue right now, but it's one of those two. It will force the cities or the municipalities, whoever is in possession of those firearms, to have at least 2 auctions per year. And prior to that, anybody could, the only people that could bid on those were people with either a collector's firearms license or a federal firearms license. And we have changed that to where if that passes, anybody can get one. They just have to send it to the FFL so that they can fill out the 4473 and do it properly. And then there's also one, also in that bill contains the restricting counties from prohibiting shooting on less than 10 acres or on people with 10 acres. Excuse me. If you have 10 acres of land, you can shoot and the county can't stop you. The only thing that they can do is if you're shooting at night and you're creating a nuisance with loud noises, of course, then they can get you for noise violation, but not for discharging firearms.
What's the law regarding that now as far as shooting on acreage, Jerry?
It depends. That's kind of a local ordinance. Some counties say you can, some say you can't. I can tell you where I am. I don't know what the county says, but I guarantee you there's a lot of shooting goes on out here. I just moved out here last summer. I'm down in South Coweta County. I moved out here last summer, and the first day or so we came out here after we had bought the place, I heard some shots going across the street. I told my wife, I said, it looked like we moved into a nice neighborhood. I probably need to go meet the neighbors. So that's kind of the way we do it down here. Some will not allow it with 5 acres or less. I think some counties require 15 acres, but we'll get that uniform throughout the state and won't be able to stop you from doing that.
That's good. Well, Al, if you recall, a few years ago in Rockdale, we had someone from the sheriff's department was reallocating and selling those firearms. Remember?
They
Yeah.
were not,
Not legally, but
Well,
those firearms were being resold.
Yeah, they certainly were.
well, they weren't reselling. They weren't reselling the nice expensive ones. Those were going in their personal collections, if I remember correctly.
They were
But
actually
and that was
they were
not
going
the
to the
only
pawn
county that did that.
shop.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
You're
that's not the only county that did that.
Yeah, that was so they were going somewhere, weren't they, Alex?
They were certainly leaving the sheriff's office. Let's
Hmm.
put it that
You
way.
better believe it.
I don't know that any FFLs were involved in those transactions, but
I doubt seriously there was any background checks on that.
yeah.
Well, Jerry,
Crazy.
let me ask: is there anything before we let you go that you want to share with the audience and put out there about anything that's concerned you in the future, or just anything that you liked for closing comments?
Well, I would like for everybody to know that we are having at Liberty Plaza on March the 2nd. We're having a march for the second. We're having a gathering there across the street, Liberty Plaza. We'll have several speakers. We'll be talking about Georgia 2A. We'll be talking about the laws, the legislation, and we'll ask people who come there to go over and talk with their representatives or senators that day, or both, to tell them how we feel about it. So everybody's invited. I think it starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's right across the street from the Capitol on the freeway side of the Capitol, Liberty Plaza, and it's our march for the second on March 2nd. And I noticed somebody said they needed a representative from GA2A. I think Brushfire.
That was
something.
that's Chris Lowry with the Brushfire Mind. I'll send you his number.
Yeah. Do that or have him call me, either way, and we'll talk and see what we can get done.
Okay. Yeah.
And in fact, we've always been good about trying to go places and speak to local groups, and it doesn't matter really who it is, whether they're affiliated with somebody, homeowners association. We're not particular who we go to speak about. We just go try to tell them the truth about the gun laws in Georgia.
Right.
Yeah, Chris has a show too, so I think Chris probably wants you to come on his show.
That'd be fine. We can do that. Don't have a problem with that as long as it doesn't interfere with something that's already scheduled. And
right.
If it's Friday, I think that'd be okay.
But they do a daily.
Call me or
Chris does a daily show.
Oh, okay.
Maybe Monday through Friday. Yeah, it would be any day of the week.
I'll pass your information.
What's the name of that?
Him.
The Brushfire Mind.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I got it. But yeah, just get it. I'll be more than happy to discuss anything with them, and we'll go from there.
All right, excellent. Yeah, he says you can do it any day. Chris does a daily morning show, and I'll get your contact informations exchanged so that you all can touch base.
Okay.
Cool. Well,
okay, I appreciate that.
Well, go ahead, Jerry.
Well, the only thing I was going to say is I really appreciate being on here. I enjoyed it, and I've this is not my first time, and I enjoyed the banter back and forth. I think y'all are doing an excellent job, and I appreciate you asking me to come on.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, and we think, and as if there are any developments, and if this legislation goes south, we're going to ask you to come back and tell us what went south and why. Georgia,
and who's responsible?
And who's responsible, and when GA2A withdrew their support. Okay.
We can do that. We can do that.
Okay. Thanks, Jerry.
You'll know because you'll see it in you'll see it in an email, so you'll know.
We'll get an email real quick. I got you. So, well, we thank you for coming on, and we look forward for you joining us again. Thanks, Jerry, and good night.
You bet. Good night.
Good night, Jerry.
Good night, Jerry. So, Al, that was a good little bit of information from Jerry, and I'm glad we had him on, and we know that we know. Well, I'm glad we know right now that Jerry and them support the legislation as presented.
Yeah, apparently there's more than one constitutional carry bill, though.
The bill that is being carried by Alvaretti or whatever his name is, and I'm not even going to say the guy who originated the legislation. He's in the House and he's in the doghouse with the speaker, and
Okay.
he couldn't carry it because, from my understanding, the speaker said if he carried it, it wasn't getting anywhere. So
Mm.
he can't carry the legislation. And it is a good piece of legislation because it doesn't restrict. Um, but I do know the governor's got a piece of legislation that's going to be carried by his floor leaders, and that's what I think Jerry's talking about when they start merging these legislations and do their little things where they reconcile them. That the bill might not end up being the same legislation as it was intended to be. And speaking of legislations that may not be the same as they intended to be, we're going to talk about House Bill 333 for a minute.
Actually, real quick before we move on, um, Barry Landau made a
I
comment.
saw that comment.
He
Yeah.
said, "More untrained folks carrying sidearms does not equate to a safer society." And listen, I would agree with that, and I don't think anybody made that claim during the conversation. Um, but in the same vein, it also doesn't translate to a more dangerous society, right? People exercising their rights, people having a means of self defense, especially women, especially young women, right? Who are most commonly the victims of assaults and rapes, allowing them, not it's not allowing them, we shouldn't be granted our rights exist. And affording or them being able to afford themselves of a means of self-defense is I think it's absolutely their right to do. Accidental discharges, they happen. um, they happen. I listen. I don't know anyone that's been killed from an AD. I'm sure there.
Alex,
I'm
I
sure
do.
there are outliers. I'm sure there are a handful of people each year that get killed by an
Alex,
AD.
I do, and I'm going to interject into here about this. When I was a young guy in high school, the little town right below our community, um, two academy trained police officers were playing quick draw Western style bullcrap. They were playing quick draw, and there was an accidental discharge, and the one officer killed the other one.
Yeah, I
Now
mean,
these were two trained individuals with firearms who did something stupid, and one of them died of an accidental discharge. So it's unfair to say that people who don't have training are going to be the people who do accidental discharges.
yeah, I mean, there's a very famous video of a SWAT officer who went to a school classroom to talk to the kids, and he was up the front handling his gun, saying, "I'm the only person in this building qualified to do this," and he goes ahead and puts a round into the floor. I mean, ads happen. Uh, they're not accidental, they're negligent. There's no such thing as an accidental discharge. They are negligent discharges. A gun goes off for one reason and one reason alone, and that's pulling the trigger. And you know, most responsible gun owners, 99.9% of gun owners understand the four fundamentals of gun safety. And all we have to do is look at other states that have constitutional carry, and the data is very clear. Crime rates come down. The rates of negligent discharges don't go up. It's generally beneficial to that state to
Alex,
implement permitless carry.
and I've only heard of one gun that has actually discharged itself, and Alex Baldwin claims that the gun he was
That's
handling
right.
it discharged itself.
That's right, Alex Baldwin's gun. Barry, I understand people's concerns, but we're surrounded by fools every day. There are fools on the roads. There are fools all over the place. Just look at some of the things people do when they're driving their cars that put others' lives in danger. And nobody has said, "Hey, we need to ban cars." So
Yep, I agree. So that's enough's enough. So House
mhm.
Bill 333.
House Bill 333.
House Bill 333 was legislation that passed actually last year. Then it was a legislation. The biggest thing that it did last year was allowed PACs to be developed by incumbent political officials to raise money. And the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, developed a big PAC and was raising money. And the PACs can raise money during session. Well, David Perdue filed a lawsuit, and a judge issued a stay, which said that that legislation was not constitutional, and that these incumbents were not allowed to spend money or raise any additional money from those PACs until after the election, just like it's always said that elected officials cannot raise money. So what the incumbents have done, they're going to amend that legislation and include challengers.
Correct.
That someone challenge a private citizen who is not voting in the legislature during legislative session to pass legislation that someone can give you money to influence, they want them not to be able to raise funds. The incumbent already has a substantial advantage by being the incumbent, and lobbyists and companies already flooding donations to those guys before and after session. It is very difficult for incumbents to raise money in the first place. And then these guys now, and what we're calling this, those of us who oppose this legislation are calling this the Incumbent Protection Act, because the incumbents are doing this to protect themselves. I mean, and the biggest concern for me is who's carrying this in the Senate. And it's Senator Brian Strickland, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, who is facing a formidable challenge this year from a challenger, and now what's sponsoring legislation so that your opponent can't raise money when Brian Strickland in his political career has raised almost $900,000, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Almost $900,000 between Brian Strickland's his campaign and PACs. They spent $500,000 in 2020 to get him reelected by 400 votes. Mm. So, I mean, of course, they feel that this is, it's what it is. It's the Incumbent Protection Act. And as citizens, we should be outraged. And we encourage you to reach out to your state senators. They're going to be having a hearing on this in the Rules Committee tomorrow. And we just ask you to reach out to your state senators and tell them to vote no for House Bill 333.
Yeah, this is weak, vulnerable incumbent Republicans who have realized the writing's on the wall and that they're going to get out fundraised by their challengers because they've done such an abysmal job in office that people don't want to support them the way they have in the past. So in order to try to remove that challenger advantage, they're trying to move this legislation forward. It flies in the face of everything that Republicans have done in the past in opposing campaign finance reform. Now, all of a sudden, because they think it's going to help them keep their mediocre asses in their jobs, now all of a sudden they support this type of campaign finance reform. And I think it's so blatantly obvious what's going on here. And yeah, people should be outraged about this. People should be livid about this.
Well, I mean, I just think when we look at something too, Al, we've got, and I'm just, someone said you're picking on Senator Strickland. Well, I might be a little bit, but I'm allowed to. I'm a constituent. I'm a constituent for right now, because Senator Strickland is after this session will not be representing Rockdale County because they redistricted 17. And we were originally told they were going to take it south, and it wasn't even going to butt Rockdale County. That's not it. Al, I don't know if you're aware, but the way they redistricted 17, it touches more of Rockdale County now than it did before. It actually goes all the way and touches Rockdale County all the way from the bottom to the top, because it goes all the way along Newton County and into Walton County now.
Right.
So I mean, they could have actually the northern counties. The northern part of Rockdale, they could have put in to 17. They could have kept the southern part that was in 17, already in 17. There's a reason that it was taken out, and then they wanted to try to draw 17 into a super Republican district, and that's
Yeah.
what they've done.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know who made the comment about picking on Brian Strickland. My comments are actually directed toward the Governor Kemp. But, and this is important, but if those people who support Governor Kemp get wrapped up in this, then so be it. I mean, these representatives, they pick their sides. They pick the side they want to. You either want to represent the side of the people, or you want to represent the side of the governor, because the governor's made it clear he doesn't represent the people.
yeah.
And if that's the choice that Brian Strickland has made, then Brian Strickland has made that bed, and he's going to have to lay in it.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. He's been a representative in one manner or the other, either in the House or the Senate for 10 years now. Raised almost $1 million to maintain a $17,000 a year job.
Right.
Guys, I mean, but that's not just him. That's the majority of those representatives who have represented a district for that time period. I would say the majority of them have raised around $1 million during that time period. And then I think that's just, we've got, when we talk about campaign reform and campaign finance, I mean, there's where we've got to put limits on this is, do we really want that kind of money being spent on $17,000 a year jobs? Because the influence of those positions far exceeds the $17,000 salary.
Well, and Republicans need to think about this, and they need to think about it intelligently. If we end up with a Democrat governor at some point, it means that any Republican challenger is going to be restricted by the law that our current governor is currently proposing. It's going to put future Republican challengers for governor at a disadvantage over the incumbent. This is a very slippery slope. This is a very dangerous game to play. They're playing it because they're in self-preservation mode. They're not thinking about the party in the future. They're only thinking about themselves right now.
Chris made a point. When I look at Brian's campaign page, I found it very disconcerting because it reads, I'm going to show you, it reads like a woke Democrat page. And I've had these conversations with Senator Strickland myself that he's way too moderate or left leaning, to be representing a conservative base. And I've had the conversation, and I think that's accurate. And I think that's one of the problems that he's facing right now, Chris, because he's moved from he did represent a moderate district, and now that a moderate district that was in the low 50s as far as what percent that it was Republican. Now he's shifted to a 65-67% Republican district who is very conservative, who are not going to like or go along with a lot of the voting things he's done in the past and policies that he supported in the past. So now he's having a hard time with people actually in that area coming on board and actually signing on. And it is very difficult. I mean, and especially with him running now against a conservative individual who lives in the new region that they added, they're finding it very difficult to gain ground in that area because that person lives in that area and they are a true conservative.
Hence wanting these additional restrictions. But again, my concern isn't the right now. My concern is in 2 years' time or in 4 years' time, when there are people who have been elected into office who will then be protected by this legislation. It's a very dangerous game Republicans are playing, and it's incumbent on us as Republicans to let them know we see what you're doing and you're going to cost us the future. To try and save your butt right now, you're going to cost us the future. It's a very dangerous game.
It is a very dangerous game, and citizens of Rockdale County, right now, Brian Strickland still represents Rockdale County. So you guys need to call him and tell him to vote against the piece of legislation that he's sponsoring. Vote against HB 333 because it's bad legislation. Oh, and I was going to get to the hate crime thing where he supported the red flag thing and then tried to, and
Well,
Alex got in his case
also,
hard about that.
also election integrity didn't, if I'm
He,
not mistaken, he didn't vote. He walked out of
he,
the session, right?
he ended up voting on the final modified version, but
Okay.
he did walk on that twice, and we've got the dates that he walked on it. So
Mhm.
he did walk on that legislation, and when he walked on it, I do know this too, that the lieutenant governor attempted to get one other senator not to come in that day because that senator had COVID and was just coming off COVID restrictions, and he tried to get that person to take one more COVID day. If that senator would have taken that COVID day and not came in and voted with those other people that walked, Senate Bill 202 would not have passed, Alex.
Mhm. Listen, I like Brian, and I think he has done some good work as a senator, but in these it's the last couple of years, this last year or so that have mattered, and I think he's dropped the ball. Quite frankly, I think he's dropped the ball.
From what I've seen, and I think you and I've discussed this, when one of these senators is either a House leader or they become one of the chairman of one of these powerful committees, and if they don't still keep that side to where they want good constituent service and represent their district, and they truly just focus on that job, they end up working for the governor. Is who they
Mhm.
end up working for. And I think the problem that we have is unfortunately Senator Strickland has become nothing more but a surrogate of Brian Kemp.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately, yes.
unfortunately, so you can't untie the two. The two are tied together. I just went to a rally yesterday, an anti-Rivian rally about the car truck manufacturer over in. That was and everybody on this show knows how Vernon Jones and I have had a sort of a
Love-hate relationship.
yeah. But I'll tell you what, yesterday Vernon Jones was my hero. He stood up. I mean, and he spoke some truth because the chairman of the Morgan County Commission stood up and said, "It doesn't matter how I vote in this because I'm just a tiebreaker. The votes are there, and if we vote against it, the governor's going to come in and take that land and do what he wants anyway. This is a done deal." Vernon Jones had already spoke earlier in the day. He came back up and said, "I need to correct something." He got up in there and said, "The gentleman who just spoke incorrectly." He said, "The state of Georgia does not have the right to use sovereign domain to come in and take a piece of land and force a private land sale." He said they can only condemn it if they're going to use it for public use, not private use. He said Brian Kemp nor any other government entity can condemn a piece of land and force a private land sale. He said if this county commission does not zone that for that, then that property can't be used for that. And the state of Georgia cannot come in and intervene because it is not in the purview of their legal authority. That
Okay.
that chairman went nuts. Vernon came up and tried to talk to him. He waved his arm and wouldn't talk because Vernon, and then all of a sudden, by about 50 people surrounded that chairman and were letting him have it because he told them something, and Vernon went up and told, "This is the truth about this, not what he's saying." I
Right.
also know that several state senators, and I'm not going to throw their names out now because I didn't ask permission to say, but they have also said that's far from over because but that's far from over, and it's nowhere near a done deal. But they're trying to force. They were trying to let those citizens think they didn't have a voice and what they were doing doesn't matter. Alex, I watched. There were 250, 300 people, and they were there. People were going in and out. They had a barbecue dinner that they had yesterday. They
Mhm.
had over 600 barbecue plates that they had there. At the end of the day, none of those plates were there because the people that were not staying at the rally were coming in and out and getting the rally. They raised over $6,000 or $7,000 yesterday just at the barbecue thing because an
Right.
anonymous donor actually stepped in and paid the food bill.
Hmm.
So every dime that was raised yesterday for that went, and they're attempting to raise $250,000 for their legal fees. And I think if they get a good eminent domain attorney, I think they have an excellent chance of winning that case over there.
Mm. Wow.
And then Vernon also told him one thing: there's an authority over there. And we're going to talk about an authority here in a second too. But it's the JDA, and it's an authority. It's the authority that does the business development here in Rockdale that we've talked about before, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
It's that same kind of authority, and there's like 4 counties that belong to that authority.
Right.
And,
They're the ones that got the Facebook data center.
yeah. And then Vernon said, I want you to know this. He said, if you tell your county commissioners you want to go in and withdraw from that authority, then any deals that they made don't involve your county because your county is pulled out of the authority.
Right.
So and when Vernon said that, the guy did not like hearing that because it pushes it back on that county commission that, you do have the authority in several different ways. First, you cannot pass the zoning. Second, the Morgan County can pull out of the JDA. By pulling out of the JDA has no authority of making a deal to bring a business to Morgan County. So, and this you got to remember, Vernon Jones has been in the legislature. This is his second time there, and he knows his way around that legislative process.
Sure.
So, I was glad that he was there and he was able to correct a few things so that the people at that meeting were not just told you're wasting your time. He let them know you're not wasting your time.
Yeah. We're not just simply given misinformation.
And most of the time, if they would have been given that information by that chairman, the majority of them would have walked away believing that, wouldn't they?
Sure, absolutely.
And that's just like Rockdale County. How often, Al, do you think we're given misinformation by their Channel 23 and by the commissioners and when they're at the board? It's always a double check thing because we never know what's quite right or what's slanted.
We're often given partial, selective information. We're often given partial misinformation. I don't know. I can't think of any specific examples right now. I know it's happened. It's they're very selective about what they choose to tell people.
Well, let's just they're talking about the facilities authority. They're pushing this truly as an authority that's going to be self-funded through revenue. They've said it in a couple of meetings. It was even in a newspaper article that taxes weren't going to be increased because these right. Anything they did through this thing was going to be self-funded.
Right.
And we all know that the first thing they want to do with this is build a courthouse. And I have went to the legislature, I've went to the judicial, and I've went to another division in the judicial, and was told no, and any of the funds that are already here are allocated and can't be shifted, and the commission doesn't have the authority to reallocate the funds.
Right.
And I've got this information from a judge, a legislator, and someone in the clerk's office.
Well, we know how it's not true. If it were true, it would say so in the resolution, and it doesn't. So they can say whatever they like, but unless that's actually spelled out in the resolution, then it's just empty words, right? That may be their intention, but they certainly haven't codified that in the resolution they drafted.
Well, the resolution clearly states they can raise funds by any means.
By any means. And so I have to go, we as citizens, as taxpayers, we have to go by the wording of the resolution of the legislation that they're trying to get passed. That's what we have to go by. I stopped taking Oz Nesbitt's word for anything years ago because Oz is very selective about the information that he passes out. He's not going to sit there and tell people, yeah, we can raise revenue by any means we want, but our intention is only to do it by revenue until revenue until revenue no longer works. And that it's not going to work for a courthouse, for a judicial complex of any kind. It's just not going to work unless they plan on coming up with creative new ways of generating revenue in the court system for paying for parking, for example, charging you an entry fee, a gate fee, for example. Who knows what they're planning on doing? and the problem is there's such a lack of transparency. We have absolutely no idea what they're planning on doing. We
No,
know they don't plan on doing what the courthouse committee suggested because they put those in a drawer and forgot about them entirely. Haven't brought them up again since.
well, I want to, we talked last week about the resolution, and we talked about the 3-person resolution. They can appoint themselves, but we didn't mention last week that there is actually specific language that says that a quorum shall constitute 2 people.
Correct.
So that means Rockdale County, I think our official census numbers were a little under 94,000 people, right? So, so that means 2 people would be able to decide the fate of close to 94,000 people.
2 people will be able to take out loans for hundreds of millions of dollars on behalf of everybody in Rockdale County. While we live in a county where our own finance director says funds are currently being mismanaged. I mean, if you ask me, that's kind of a recipe for disaster.
I'm concerned. And I think we all have, we all should be
Should be concerned.
We should be concerned. It's when we look at what the county has spent in the past 6-8 years, and if we would give them the authority, because we did send Senator Strickland a letter, the Rockdale voter group did, and he did respond back, and through his legislative assistant, he's not going to be able to attend Tuesday due to prior commitments, but he did say that he is concerned about this legislation, and that as presented to them now would have a difficult time voting for it because it does not have limitations. Concerned about the 3-person board with them being able to appoint themselves. He listed 4 or 5 things that they were concerned about, and I had heard these things also. And then, even the Democrats were actually very concerned about portions of that. So I think, as presented right now, I don't think we have to be concerned. But this is that we've got to remember. They'll come back next year with this again.
Sure. They're going to come back with it over and over. And there aren't enough changes to be made to make this palatable. There just aren't. We are mismanaging money in Rockdale. They don't need to be granted access to any additional money, period. Period.
And I think we talked last week that as chairman of the Rockdale Republican Party, I can have ballot questions asked in the primary. Mm-hmm. I'm actually, one of the questions I'm going to add is, do the citizens of Rockdale County support a facilities authority?
Right.
So they'll have an idea.
I think that's a double-edged sword. Is just simply putting that, because most people aren't going to. The majority of people would have no idea what that is.
We're going to. Mine will only be to Republicans because I can't make the Democrats ask questions.
Right.
So our Republican base is going to be educated on what a facilities authority is, Alex.
Okay.
So we're going to educate people on what a facilities authority is. Any of the questions that we ask, we're going to send that out to the community and let the community know what our thoughts are on it, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to ask about 5 commissioners. We're going to ask if they think we should have a county manager or maintain the system we have with the CEO chairman, because what the people want is what the people want.
Yeah. But CJ says, how can we stop this spending? And if it does happen, what then? Here's the thing. If this is implemented and they take out hundreds of millions of dollars in loans, it doesn't matter if you vote them out. You're stuck with those loans. And there's a 40-year limit on the financing of these loans. up to 40 years. The rules they have to play under right now give them a maximum borrowing limit, I believe, of, is it 2 years, Larry?
1 year.
1 year. The most money they can borrow now is the amount of money that they can pay back in 1 year. That protects us. That's in the law. That's written into law as a protection measure for the citizens, for
That's
the taxpayers.
Georgia state law, and what they're wanting to do with
They're
this
looking to
authority is
bypass
to
it.
bypass state law.
Yeah. And grant themselves the authority to borrow for 40 years. The courthouse loan, the 140 million, would have been for 20 years. So if they're extending it past 20 to 40, how much are they planning on borrowing?
Let's talk about that. They've got loans out now from the water authority that they've refinanced. That after they refinanced it, they never paid anything. So these loans that were supposed to be whatever they were at that time, they have not paid one dime on those loans in principal.
Right. These loans will never be paid off. We will service interest on these bonds for the rest of our lives. And then your kids will service the interest on these bonds for the rest of their lives. And in the meantime, the quality of living in the county will continue to deteriorate because we'll be spending the bulk of our money servicing debt. This administration have already increased in 6 years, in 6 short years, they've increased the county budget by $30 million in 6 years. They're mismanaging, but by the words of our own finance director, they're mismanaging our money. They cannot be trusted with an additional source of borrowing. They just can't.
Alex, and the excuse that we get, and you'll hear this all the time, we're providing you services that you've asked for. I don't recall anybody asking for this. I mean, I don't. Other than themselves.
They put out these surveys, right? They do these online surveys. And the way they do them is remarkably misleading because there's never an option for no. It's only, hey, if we're going to spend this money, what would you prefer us to spend it on? They'll list 8 or 10 items. And your only options are or people believe their option is to pick one of them. Well, by doing it that way, they always end up with a result. There's always something that they can say, well, you all told us you wanted to spend this money. You answered this survey. These surveys, I've been saying it for years, they're remarkably misleading. The county needs to change the way they do them. They're not going to because they're looking for a predetermined outcome. But the very first item, the very first checkbox should be none of the, or the very last one, either way, none of the above.
And of the 94,000 residents in Rockdale County, Al, and 50 people respond to the survey, they're going to use the results of 50 people and say,
absolutely they are. Absolutely they are. And then when you submit an Open Records Act request to find out to get the respondents, good luck getting them. We've gotten a response to one of those once. Yeah, it's all predetermined, Larry. Everything they do is set up to get their way. Well, they lost their $140 million bond ballot initiative. And so they found a way to circumvent that to still get their way.
Well, this coming Tuesday, it's going to be very interesting. We're going to be having a town hall at the Honey Creek Country Club. And it'll be the Rockdale Voter Group having this town hall, and it's a nonpartisan organization. And the town hall is going to be about the Facilities Authority and the SPLOST. And, and I'm figuring since it's the voter group, some people may ask some questions about the property tax exemption for seniors. And that is moving along in the legislature right now. And from what I understand, Rhonda Taylor had told me that they should be an ad coming out in the paper maybe next week. Mm-hmm. And once that ad comes out in the paper, then we'll be able to see the legislation. We'll be able to see the bill and go look it up. But she's told me that she's kept her word and that she will be introducing that legislation for the seniors of Rockdale this year. So we'll be able to do that. But this town hall is going to be very important for people to come to. The Rockdale Voter Group has registered officially as a committee to work against the SPLOST. And a lot of people don't realize this. When there's a ballot question like that that's going to be on the ballot, you have to register to be able to work for it or oppose it. So the Rockdale Voter Group is now allowed to raise funds and actually openly oppose the SPLOST. So this has not been done in Rockdale County for over 20 years, a SPLOST being opposed. I think that we can be very effective with it. I think this is a twofold thing that we must do as Rockdale Sullivan County citizens. We must get our legislators to defeat the Facilities Authority, and we must also push back the SPLOST at the same time. That will send a strong message to this Board of Commission that there are a group of citizens that are watching and that will fight back. Right. And then hopefully with that, in tandem with this going on, that Commissioner Williams will get upset in the Democrat primary, and that will send an additional message that the citizens of Rockdale County are not happy with the direction of the Board of. It takes drastic action like this before these guys take note and listen to us, and it won't happen without the citizens getting involved and paying attention and helping at the ballot box.
Yeah, and it's not just the Board of Commissioners, it's the entire administration, it's the county department heads. Everybody needs to have a message sent to them that, you know what, this county is out of control. The mismanagement of money doesn't begin and end with Oz Nesbitt. It begins with the departments. The mismanagement is taking place at the department level.
Yes.
Every one of them needs a message sent.
Yep. I have, myself and members of the voter group, the nonpartisan organization, have had very positive conversations with Representative Rhonda Taylor. So I recommend anybody listening that, you know, you have concerns with these issues, definitely reach out to Representative Taylor. But tomorrow on the Rockdale Voter Group, we are going to launch some changes on the website, Alex. We're going to have an account set up to accept donations to oppose the SPLOST.
Okay.
We are also going to have a form email that's generated that all you have to do is put your name on it, an address, and push send, and the email will automatically be sent to your legislators.
Okay.
And this is going to be about the Facilities Authority. So we hope that email should be up and running by Tuesday. So we're going to be working on that tomorrow, so that we can get that email formatted. So all you have to do is put your personal information, and then this email will be shot to them that you oppose the creation of a Facilities Authority in Rockdale County. So we're trying to do everything we can to make this as easy as possible for you, the citizen, to let these legislators know that you oppose these things.
Yep. Great. Well, good.
So
good.
I'm going to wrap it up here tonight, Al. I thank you for coming on tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I think we had a good show with Executive Director Jerry Henry. The first part of the show, we were able to talk a lot about gun rights and let people understand some things. And then we shifted back to Rockdale County because our audience really cares and they want to know what's going on in Rockdale County. And I'm more than glad to be able to provide the information to you. And I'm glad to help when I can fight these issues with you, hand in hand. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay right here and fight with you guys. So I just thank you for it. And then next week, we'll give you an update of what's going on in Rockdale County and from the legislature. We may have some update on the Facilities Authority, the tax relief for senior citizens, and we'll report back what happened at that town hall meeting. And also, I believe Chris Lowry is going to come and stream that for us, Alex.
Is he? Well, good.
Yeah,
Good. Good for him.
Okay, so thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.